Okay, it looks like we've probably given enough time for people. So Anna, if you'd like to go ahead and kick it off.
All
Thank you.
right. Well, hello, and thank you for joining us today so we can tell you a little bit about our agency and a big transportation planning effort that's underway. But first, let us introduce ourselves. I'm Anna Devers, Public Information Officer for the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments, or SLOCOG.
And I am James Worthley. I'm the Planning Division Chief for SLOCOG, and I'm helping to orchestrate this long-range plan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Macias. I am also SLOCOG staffer, and today I will be administrating the meeting.
Sean will now give you a brief overview of how today's webinar is going to work.
All righty, everyone. So please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to SLOCOG's YouTube account. For those of you less familiar with Zoom webinars, there is a control panel at the bottom center of the screen. If you have any technical questions or problems, please type them into the chat box and I will do my best to help you. Also, there will be dedicated time for questions upon completion of the presentation, where we will take both written and verbal questions. Of course, you may type questions in the Q&A box at any time. I'll provide additional information on how to make verbal comments prior to opening up the Q&A period. Thanks.
And you'll probably want to advance over a slide.
Sorry about that. Yep, that's all the information I just went over. Sorry. Give you a little bit to read it, and this will show up again for the Q&A portion of that.
All right, you can go on to the next slide. Thank you, Sean. So for those of you who aren't familiar with SLOCOG, we are a regional council and an association of local governments comprised of 7 cities in the county. Our board has 12 elected members, 1 from each city council, and all of the county board of supervisors. SLOCOG's chief responsibilities include transportation planning and funding for the region, while serving as a forum for the study and resolution of regional issues. Regional agencies like us plan, fund, and manage local transportation systems. And when we plan for transportation, we plan for all modes of travel. If it includes cars, buses, trains, biking, walking, senior shuttles, and other social services transportation, we are on the job. So things like safety, system preservation, air quality, our carbon footprint, mode choice, and congestion management are all important aspects of what we consider when we plan for our future. At this point, you may be asking yourself, what is a regional council? Well, regional councils or councils of government are just like the name suggests, a group of local governments that come together to work on issues that are broader than just one jurisdiction. Issues like transportation, land use, housing, and air quality need regional solutions because these issues don't stop at the boundary of any one local jurisdiction. Much of our agency's funding comes from the federal government through our designation as a Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO. We also get state funding through our state designation as a Regional Transportation Planning Agency, or RTPA. And with a total of 18 MPOs and 44 RTPAs in California, we're not alone. Like many of our neighboring regions, SLOCOG is responsible for coordinating, planning, and programming transportation plans and projects, developing and funding strategic plans, and building consensus. SLOCOG has been doing regional planning for over 50 years, and yet many residents haven't heard of us. But I bet many of them know or use some of the projects that we help fund, like the 14th Street Bridge in Paso Robles, the new RTA bus maintenance facility, the Lewis Avenue Bridge in Atascadero, the Railroad Safety Trail in SLO, the Los Osos Valley Interchange, or the redesigned Grover Beach train station. So when you take a day trip to Santa Barbara on the Pacific Surfliner, or take your bike on the Bob Jones Trail to grab some sunshine and exercise, SLOCOG played a big part in delivering that project or service. Now, many of the folks in this meeting might know us best because of the programs we offer through our regional rideshare division. Increasing traffic congestion and gas prices are issues that affect many people here in SLO. Rideshare programs work together to increase awareness and availability of transportation options, and they reduce costs for commuters. For instance, our Safe Routes to School program helps make it safe, convenient, and fun for children to walk and bike to school, which also helps kids stay active while helping reduce traffic congestion and pollution around school zones. Now, before we get into the meat of today's meeting, the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan, let's take a minute to think about our transportation system. We're going to launch a poll here for you shortly, and we want to know what you think about our transportation system here in SLO County. as it is today. We want you to think about the entire transportation system. So all types of travel, including car, biking, walking, bus, paratransit, senior rides, and train. Any way a person here can get from point A to point B. Sean, will you please launch that poll? Now, how well do you think the region's transportation system serves the needs of its residents and visitors? Go ahead and give your answer to that, and we will share the results in a few moments, but we'll give you a few more seconds to respond. The spectrum goes from A, great, it serves all travelers equally well. B, pretty good, it serves most travelers adequately. C, average, it serves some travelers the way it should. Or D, failing, no one's needs are being met. Okay, Sean, I think we can probably close that poll now.
We have a few more popping in at the last second here.
Okay, I'll let you time it then.
All right, we got 2 more seconds for you folks. All righty, so the poll has now closed. Looks like the highest scoring option with 53% of the votes was C, average, serve some travelers the way it should.
All right, so we would agree with you. Clearly, we have room for improvement. So we think there's definitely work that needs to be done on our transportation system. So now I'm going to kick it over to James, our planning director.
Oh, great. Thanks, Anna. Let's go to that next slide. There we go. So each one of the programs and projects that Anna mentioned earlier began as a need that was identified in a long-range regional transportation plan, or RTP. Through this plan and a number of other steps, each one of those projects received funding or were eventually realized. And the 2023 RTP is the reason I'm talking to you today. The RTP will plan for transportation system investments and make policy recommendations through the year 2045. Now, every 4 years, SLOCOG updates this 20+ year document and looks at how we will get around our region in the future. It focuses on transportation related issues such as mobility and congestion, accessibility, safety, security, sustainability, equity. The plan identifies existing and future regional transportation needs. It presents strategies to alleviate or address deficiencies in the region's transportation system. It demonstrates air quality conformity. It identifies anticipated revenues for our projects. It prioritizes projects by short, mid, or long terms. And it always is organized by our 4 major elements shown here: the policy element, action element, financial element, and the sustainable community strategy, also called the SCS for short. Now, the policy element describes the region and sets the goals of the plan. It includes a vision and goals, as well as action strategies that are necessary to attain the plan's expectations. The action element includes all modes of travel and matches available funding and timeframes with the investments and improvements. And the financial element identifies and projects all available revenues and funding assumptions. Funding sources can come from federal, state, or locally generated sources. Now, unlike 89 to 90% of California's population today, our residents in our region do not generate region-specific transportation funds through a sales tax, like our neighbors of Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, Monterey, and even San Benito counties, as well as 21 other California counties. Instead, we are reliant upon our local cities, the county, state, and federal budgets to support our transportation investment needs. As a result, many of the projects on our prioritization list have no way of being funded within the next 20 to 23 years. Essentially, we have 2 lists of projects: those that can be funded and those that can't. Next, we have a short video that kind of describes these lists a little further. Sean?
RTPs are also required to identify future transportation investments or projects that are considered financially constrained or unconstrained. Constrained means the investment is within the budget of expected funding. Unconstrained means that while specific investments are needed, they do not fit within the budget due to inadequate funding. Funding for these investments can come from federal, state, or locally generated sources. Our region currently depends on state and federal sources to meet our investment needs. These funds are mostly targeted to fix-it-first or maintenance projects. Many betterments and improvements to the transportation system remain a challenge to implement even though they continue to be a priority. As a result, the list of constrained projects is shrinking, while much desired investments are moved to the unconstrained list that are not within budget.
Great, thanks. So just so you have an idea of how much different projects cost, we've got this slide so you can kind of get a sense of where we are. For instance, a brand new interchange typically runs $30 to $60 million depending on location. And really, to look at something familiar, go back to that slide, John. Real life example, the Prado Road interchange now tops over $60 million. So these aren't going down, and these are quite realistic costs that you're seeing. The next slide, we finally have the Sustainable Community Strategy, or SCS. What is that and why do we need it? Well, a new law was approved in 2008 for California that added this piece to our regional transportation plans. Essentially, the SCS helps us plan for new growth of housing, population, and jobs in conjunction with our transportation strategies and investments. We develop and model multiple strategies in an effort to meet our greenhouse gas reduction targets that are assigned to us by the state. Now we have another video to help explain this SCS for you as well. Sean?
What is a Sustainable Community Strategy, or SCS, and why do we need it? Every region in California must prepare an SCS as part of its RTP. The SCS coordinates transportation and land use planning efforts. The SCS contains land use, housing, and transportation strategies that, if implemented, allow the region to meet its greenhouse gas reduction targets assigned by the state. In California, vehicles are the #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions. Where we live and accessibility of jobs, goods, and services has a major effect on how we get around. To plan effectively, land use and transportation must be considered jointly. Walkable, bikeable, transit-oriented communities reduce the need to drive and are more sustainable and efficient. But the mere existence of sidewalks, bike lanes, and buses does not cause them to be so. Studies show that proximity and connectivity matter greatly to the total miles we typically drive. Walking and biking require more than just good sidewalks and bike lanes. You need destinations that are close enough to get to. The same goes for transit. You are more likely to take the bus if it comes often and goes where you're headed. But in order for this to make sense economically, the proper balance of housing, employment, and services must be achieved. There are two primary areas to accommodate the new homes and jobs in our region over the next 25 years: inside urban areas and outside urban areas. Inside urban areas, we have downtowns and villages, commercial corridors, and residential developments. It may occur as infill or reuse and may be defined through the type of land use, design, the mix of housing types, and available modes of travel. Outside urban areas, we have development adjacent to urban areas, just outside of existing urban borders, and rural area development. The SCS helps guide planning through analysis and recommendations for residential growth, employment centers, and transportation investments throughout the entire region. Ultimately, land use decisions are determined locally through land use and circulation elements. The SCS helps to guide regional investments and priorities. In the end, people may still choose to drive to their destinations, but shorter travel distances and more convenient travel options decreases travel time, costs, and congestion for everyone. To improve mobility, you can create more or faster ways to get from A to B, or you can bring A closer to B. The first option adds supply to reduce demand by creating new routes, adding lanes, increasing efficiency on existing routes, and travel mode options. The second occurs by encouraging development near transit and major roadways, creating walkable communities and building homes and services near job centers. SLOCOG explores multiple housing, job, and transportation scenarios through modeling and testing as part of the SCS development process. We want your input to help develop these scenarios. Over the next 20+ years, how should our region grow?
All right, so we're going to launch a couple of poll questions for you here. And we want you to think about what you just learned in our video clip about the sustainable community strategy and how we will accommodate future growth. Sean, will you please launch the second poll? All right, so when considering where you would like to see new development generally, would you prefer to see more of it, A, inside urban areas, B, outside urban areas, C, as a balance, divvied up both inside and outside urban areas, or D, neither area, no new development? Okay, I'll give you guys just a few seconds here. I'll let Sean.
Got it, yeah.
It's good.
We'll have to consider putting in some Jeopardy music for
Jeopardy
this
music.
last part, yeah.
I like that. That'd be fun.
All right, so we'll go ahead and pretty much everyone's answered. So, and oh, final person, perfect. And that poll, and I'm going to share the results here. Looks like the 53% again said C, as a balance both inside and outside urban areas.
Great. So James, how does this compare with the information we obtained from the 5 surveys we had available last year?
Interesting, actually. So when we did our 5 surveys last year, 2021, what we found was 48% of the respondents said inside the urban areas, 2% said outside urban areas, 34% said as a balance, and we had 16% that said no new development. Now, in our regional transportation plan, we can't really say no new development. We have to accommodate the growth that we expect is coming. So I'm pleased to see the results here. At least we accommodate all the new growth. So good job to all of you.
So thank you for that, James. We're going to do a second or a third poll here. We want to know about the types of neighborhoods you would prefer to live in. One of the terms you'll see is mixed use. This refers to properties or neighborhoods that are designed to be used for a variety of purposes, including commercial, residential, retail, or office. So Sean, can you go ahead and launch that one? All right, which of the following would you most prefer to live in? A mixed use neighborhood where you can walk or bike to stores, schools, and services. B, a residential only neighborhood where you can walk or bike to stores, schools, and services. Or C, a residential only neighborhood that requires you to use a car to get to stores, schools, and services.
All right, we have 16 out of 17 respondents. Boom, 17, we hit it. Perfect. Go ahead and share those results here. Looks like we have A with the winner, 65%, a mixed use neighborhood where you can walk or bike to stores, schools, and services.
All right. So James, how does that compare with last year's?
Interesting, actually. So same order as our survey results from 2021. What we had was A, 46% identified the mixed use where you could walk to schools and services. B, where we have 29%, we had 41% in the 2021 survey, so but just below A. And the residential only neighborhood that requires a car to get around, essentially, here we say 6%, and previously our poll said 14%. So also the lowest scoring one in that poll as well.
That sounds like there's a desire to change the way a lot of things are laid out currently in a lot of our communities. All right, interesting. So now, if any of you would like to know more about what we learned in those surveys that we did last year, we had 5 surveys out. Please take a look at the results. They're located on our webpage at slocog.org/2023 RTP. You can also navigate there just by going to slocog.org. Now I'm going to kick it back to James to just go over a little of the process.
So now that you understand the nuts and bolts of the regional transportation plan, let's put it all together. We began this process about 1.5 years ago, collecting information to update our modeling tools to have the best information on housing, population, jobs, local land use changes, such as new buildings or plans for new buildings. We look to our growth forecast to identify how many new homes or people or jobs are going to be coming by 2045. And we worked with our partners at the cities, the county, Caltrans, and transit agencies as we developed this plan. Throughout the process, we engaged with our board and 3 advisory committees, and we set up a 2023 Regional Transportation Plan specific steering committee with individuals from around the county to help guide and craft this plan. We've now developed the first cuts of our vision and goals and our first cut of the financial element, but more refinements are still necessary even on them. We're now working on developing the action element pieces, all those investments, and the sustainable community strategy. And finally, we're looking for our adoption probably in the spring of 2023, but we've still got a lot of work ahead of us.
All right.
I'll hand it back to you, Anna.
Next slide,
There you
Sean. All right, so as you saw on the last slide, agency coordination and public participation are things we have in mind throughout the entire development process. And we strive to keep the public involved in one way or another throughout. So last year we had those surveys out to collect input from the public. And right now we have 2 online tools, a mapping tool and a budget game, which you can find at slocog.org/engage. We provide periodic updates on our project webpage, to our steering committee, which is made up of stakeholders that broadly represent our region's communities, to our board, and in our newsletters. We have used traditional and social media, flyers, advertisements, and even a dedicated show on Central Coast Voices to share what we are doing at critical points for engagement. We intend to host another public workshop or webinar similar to this, possibly when the draft plan is available, in addition to creating a fact sheet to provide you with the basics. We also have a speakers bureau where staff members go out to the community at large to present study information to local organizations, local agencies, working groups, and even college students. We will be engaging the speakers bureau again when our draft study is ready and out for public comment. So if you are involved in a group, organization, or business that would like one of these presentations, please reach out to me at pio@slocog.org to let me know. That's PIO, as in Public Information Officer, @slocog.org. Ultimately, our goal is to have equity in who we reach and ensure that all interested members of the public are able to participate. Now I'm going to kick it back to James for a brief demo of those online tools I mentioned.
Okay, great. So I'm going to, if you'll indulge me, share my screen. I can't share my screen yet. Sean?
James, you should be able to overtake it now. Try it one more time.
Yes, thank you. Okay. I want to show you our newest tools that we have for you that you can work with. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Looks great.
All right. Unfortunately, it's hidden halfway between other things. So this is the SLOCOG homepage. And if you go to the Engage page, that link Anna had there at the top edge there, you will find this page. On the Engage page, just down a little bit, you'll see a couple of tools. We have 3 tools up there. We're going to talk about 2 of them today. Map your ideas and take the budget challenge. So mapping your ideas is an interactive map that will allow you, the public, to identify what projects we've identified as your priority or to add your own. Before we jump into that survey map, I do want to just quickly jump to this other tab that says completed projects. As Anna mentioned before, a lot of people may not know what SLOCOG has done in their region. On this completed projects tab, you go in, you identify a community. I'll go to Grover Beach, and then it will show you the recent projects of the past 2 decades that we've completed. On this list, you see a pedestrian boardwalk connection, you see streetscape enhancements, trains expansion project, transit center improvement, interchange improvements, bike lanes and crosswalks, safe routes to school. This is just Grover Beach. I encourage you to go into this tool and see what in your community was done by SLOCOG with some of the regional funds that we have. Now on the survey map, we can proceed in as a guest. At this point, it brings up the map of our region, and it identifies 4 different categories: highway projects, transit projects, regional and local projects, which means roadway projects not on the highway, and active transportation projects, bike lanes, safe routes to school, and the like. Now, within each one of these categories, a map comes up that you can zoom into and identify either your community or the area that you're most interested in. If I go into one of these tabs, just for an example, active transportation, I can identify which project is my favorite or which projects I would really like to see done in the future. For instance, looking at this one, I see this long blue line. The long blue line is identifying a piece, if I click on the little icon there, a piece of the Choro Valley Trail, Phase 1, Cal Poly to Cuesta College. It is a multi-use path through the Choro Valley and would be hopefully built as a Class 1 project. Now, we don't say when it's going to be built. This is just on our list. It's neither constrained or unconstrained now. It's just a project that we have heard is desirable or we've identified as desirable. At this point, I could click the button and agree or heart this project. These hearts we're going to look at and see how many projects have hearts and how many projects don't have hearts. It may play a role in prioritization or selection of what is constrained or what is unconstrained. Right now, looks like this project has 3 hearts. I'm not going to click it because I don't want to skew the results. But that's not all. You could also add a project. If there's a project that you zoom into and go, gosh, I really wish there was a safe route to school near my kid's school, you could add that project even if it wasn't on our list. So by adding a project, it's just click the plus button. And for instance, if I wanted to connect the Choro Valley Trail with the Tassajara Creek Trail that goes to Highway 58, you could place your point on the spot. You could type in the project description and name, and then we would see that, wow, somebody liked this project that we didn't think of and that nobody else suggested. Now, not only that, but everybody else that goes into this mapping tool after you can see that project and go, I like that project also, and add a heart to it, to your project. I'm not going to add this because I don't want to skew the results again, but I do encourage all of you to try out this tool, check it out, and heart your projects because we're looking to see what you want or what you like on our list. Going back to that Engage page, if you take the budget challenge, this is what comes up. It gives you some of the background, the RTP. We have 3 categories here. It's highways, streets, and roads, transit, and then active transportation and livable communities again. And within these categories, there are these sliders. So if you identify, you get to, where would you spend the money is where we're going with this. More interchanges, fewer interchanges. Do you feel that road maintenance needs to be better than a 59, which is the average where we are right now, 59 being somewhere in this picture, actually a little worse than this because this is pointing to 70. So if you think it needs to be better than 59, you need to slide this up. Sliding up too far starts to result in an over budget. So go ahead, take the challenge, see if you can balance this budget and stay within the budget as you go through each of these categories and then doing transit and whether safety improvements or active transportation improvements to see where you land. Right now, I'd be over budget. When you do this, we'd love to hear what your thoughts are on a local sales tax increase if we were to have that for our region like those other counties have. And you can enter your zip code in and an email address, which then allows you to, at some point in time, put in a submit button. And if you hit that submit button, then we'll actually see what you did and what you said. Otherwise, we don't see it. It's just a game for yourselves to familiarize yourself with the challenges of funding and where we are with various options.
One of the interesting things to note too is that we have those different buckets of funding because they're often not interchangeable. So we have a dedicated amount of money and it needs to be used for very specific purposes and often cannot be, switched between modes. So
that's it. Okay. And back to you, Sean and Anna.
All right, thank you, James. So we are now in the participation section for when you can ask questions. So if you'd like to speak, please use the raise your hand feature located at the bottom of your screen. We will take you in the order you raise your hand. If you are calling in via phone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Once your name is called, please unmute and speak. If you are calling in via phone, dial *6 to unmute. You'll then have a maximum of 3 minutes to ask a question or make a comment. And with that, we're going to go ahead and open it up. For anyone who would like to speak, please raise your hand. Fantastic. First, we have Krista Jeffries. Krista, please unmute and you may speak.
Good evening. Apologies for any family noises you might hear in the background, but it is 6 o'clock at night on a school night. So I'm looking at the transit projects on the map, and there's 2 of them listed, and neither of them are named or described. I'm just kind of wondering how we're supposed to vote or leave a like on projects that don't have a name or description.
Yes, good question. Both of those were actually test projects, I believe, that I clicked on there at one point in time, simply to show that projects could be added. If there's a connection, for instance, if you want to say more routes between North County and Central County, or an additional stop or an additional route, each one of those could be its own project, even if you don't identify perfectly where it would go. Transit was one of the toughest ones for us to put together, simply because the routes don't lend themselves like projects like the short Choro Valley Trail project, and I call it short, is because it's such a long extent when you're saying between North County, South County, or North County, North Coast, where that button pops up. I'm encouraging you to plop down where you think it best fits, and hopefully somebody else will spot it also if they want to support it. But if they don't, and they click another one that says more North Coast and North County transit is needed, we will collect and aggregate those as well.
Okay. So if I'm understanding right, I can add stops to transit projects.
Yes.
Is there a place where I can add frequency? Because I think the stops are probably as good as they're going to get, but the frequency is the reason that people don't take the bus more.
So adding that comment, absolutely, with your little button, you can say add more frequency on Route 9 or Route 5
okay.
to encourage that. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand. All right. In the interim, while we're waiting for people to raise their hands, we did receive one question via the chat from Dana. I want to say the name is, would a sales tax increase need to be approved by 50% plus 1 by the entire county population, or does it require a 2/3 vote?
Yes. So a special purpose sales tax, but this would be, because it's a transportation specific sales tax, requires 2/3 level to be approved if SLOCOG were to put a measure on the ballot. Correct.
All right, thank you for that, James. We did have one other question that came in via the Q&A. Would you like me to read that one, or?
Go ahead and read that one, yeah.
All right, fantastic. This is from Tyler Penny. Larger projects seem to have a very difficult time getting through the funding process, constrained list, like the Choro Valley Trail. Would it be advantageous to split up these projects into smaller goals each 10 years so they can both gain traction for completion and to be more financially feasible?
Yes, that's a great thought, Tyler. We often do that where we identify the full corridor and then identify, well, we know that full corridor is just going to cost way too much money to improve, and it'll take too long. So we often will break it up into phases. That one, actually, that existing project that you identified is a phase 1 and a phase 2, as identified from Cal Poly to Cuesta, and then the next piece goes from Cuesta to Morro Bay. So we're already breaking it up into 2 phases. What you're saying, though, is large projects take too long. And even phased projects, in my opinion, take too long. And then part of that issue is because are reliant on the state funds and the state funding process. When a project goes from inception in the RTP to completion, there's a lot of steps in between. Environmental process, the design process, the right-of-way process, construction process. That's only 4 steps. Unfortunately, between each step, there's a funding process. And when we're reliant on state funds, we're reliant on state timing. Now, every 2 years, SLOCOG programs funds for a project, or more specifically, a phase of a project. So let's say this year we had funding for the Choro Valley Trail, phase 1, and we were trying to get it off the ground. Okay, let's start with environmental. Let's start environmental. Well, it's funded, but the state funds don't become available to us until year 4 or year 5 out from today. Okay, now we get through environmental. That took 2 years. Now we're ready to start design. Let's fund some state funds use state funds for design on the 5th year, because environmental is now done. Now again, state funds are programmed 4 or 5 years later. So now we're 10 years out, we are done with design. Now we're starting to look at, we need money for right-of-way and construction. And sometimes the cost is such that, gosh, we're cobbling together nickels and dimes to try to fund a larger piece of the project that's already been broken down into the simplest phase we could do, because we need to be a usable phase. We can't just go from Cal Poly to somewhere in the middle of nowhere. We need it to go somewhere. Relying on state funds is the biggest hurdle, the slowest moving process that causes our projects to be 10 years, 15 years, 20 years in the making. I know you don't believe 20 years is possible. Briscoe Road interchange project has been 20 years in the making and then some, and we're still waiting for construction to begin. And this is all tied back to reliant on state and federal funding.
And costs only get greater the longer we wait.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you for the questions and for the great answer there. Okay, looks like we did have another question pop in via chat from Effie. This is your information on the Pismo Beach 3rd lane project says it will increase noise and pollution. What is the best way to let you know of opposition to this project?
Email your comments to pio@slocog.org. We will always float them up to our board leadership. They will get shared when we send out board materials. And if you just want questions along the way, you can also email pio@slocog.org, and I'll investigate the answer or connect you to the transportation planner who can answer it more adequately for you. Do you have anything to add to that, James?
My guess, I'm not familiar with the information provided to Effie, but my guess is they're looking at 20 years out in the future, and 20 years is going to bring more cars. 20 more cars always brings more noise, no matter what. Be aware the 3rd lane project brought some options that would reduce, that could include sound walls, but I know that those have been controversial also. So it's kind of up in the air, I guess.
Thank you both for the answers to that question. Well, I haven't seen a flurry of raised hands, so I'm going to conclude that we have done a pretty decent job here of answering what you may have wanted to ask during our presentation.
Or confusing everybody thoroughly.
I say we wait now, hang on a few more minutes.
Yeah,
Keep it open
absolutely.
till at least 7, and then if you're good, we hope you enjoy your evening, and thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you participating and wanting to understand the process and learn more. Oh, I will, there was a couple of questions that I answered in the written chat that I'll just go ahead and voice. One was asking about the video or the slides, and we'll post the slides from today on the RTP webpage. So you'll be able to find that, as well as a link to the YouTube or to our YouTube account, where you'll be able to find today's recording as well. So you'll be able to find it that way, or you can just visit our YouTube channel. SLOCOG has their very own channel that you can do. We have a question for the draft plan. James, where
Sure.
is he?
So I see that when will the draft plan be available, I think was the question. And we're working on putting all the pieces together now. I'm hopeful that we have a draft plan put together this coming winter. So I'll say January 2023 is my expectation for a public release draft plan. And at that point in time, we will be looking for comments and engaging everybody again.
And again, a reminder too, if you want us to, staff to either, if we're able to do it in person, either come to your business, organization, agency, whatever working group you might be a part of, we're happy to do that. If we're not doing it in person, we'll be doing virtuals. So we'd be happy to present. So again, you can just reach out to pio@slocog.org for requesting that too. All right, I'm going to, oh, nope, I can't do that. So I guess just remember slocog.org/engage for those tools. And we really do want to hear from you. Would a regional transportation tax be put to the ballot by the supervisors? Could voters put one to the ballot? That's a James.
That's a good question. It's difficult to answer that. Regional transportation tax would be developed and brought forward by SLOCOG and going through all the rules that it's required to go through in order to get to the voters. That's the process I know and I'm most familiar with, because we learned that process 6 years ago. That's what I understand.
And it doesn't go just to the supervisors, it goes to our whole 12-member board, which includes, elected officials from the 7 cities as well.
That's correct. In terms of developing the whole thing, yes.
And I guess approving it to get to the point of getting on a ballot.
There are some steps that are required after our board reviews it, going through cities, going through the supervisors, getting feedback, returning to the cities, returning the supervisors with finalization. So there are a lot of steps for that to happen, yes.
For that second part of the question, could voters put one to the ballot? Is there a way for members of the public to, kind of like a grassroots campaign type of deal, or just show up at our board meetings and kind of make a request?
That's a little more convoluted. I'm guessing that there is a way for citizens to do something like this. I'm not the expert on this by any means.
But Krista, we would encourage you, if you, I don't know, want to learn more. As we learn more, we can share with you if you want to reach out to us via email. We've got a new one here. Is climate emergency ever a driving factor in rapidly propelling multimodal transportation projects throughout the county? Can it help with navigating CEQA requirements?
That's a challenging question. Good question. So certainly, well, let me go backwards a little bit. In our past RTPs, and we're required to do an RTP every 4 years by federal mandate and state mandate. Looking backwards, we've had multimodal transportation investment strategies used going back into 2001, possibly earlier. So the climate issues to us, yes, we recognize them, but our multimodal investment strategy has been here for 20 years, well before people started saying it's a climate emergency, I guess. In terms of helping navigate CEQA requirements, yes, being multimodal is a better premise to reduce environmental effects or impacts.
All right, well, it's 7:01, and unless anyone, last call to raise your hand or type a question. Da-na-na-na-na. All right, well, I don't see any, so we appreciate you joining us, and we hope you have a lovely evening. Be safe.
Thanks for coming.
Bye-bye.